So as of yesterday, our issues with China have escalated even further. Some trade war stuff going on over the past week. President Trump imposing more tariffs on China. China, of course, retaliates back with more tariff on American goods and products. And, of course, yesterday the big result of that was it sent the stock market into a complete tumble. Dow dropped by over 600 points as a result. And, you know, it's just one big mess. And now we've been hearing about President Trump trying to work on a trade deal with China for X amount of time. You know, at one point, him, his cabinet, Larry Kudlow, all coming out and saying, oh, we're close, and then nothing ever comes of it. There ends up being more tariffs. China retaliates with more tariffs, and it just evolves into one big freaking mess, basically. Okay? So, with that being said, let's take a look at a clip from Fox News last night. I went with Fox News. I'm sure you can go look up the network of your choice. I went with just the first clip that came up from Fox News. They're going to talk about the new tariffs that have been imposed, and we'll go from there.
Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Brett Baer. Breaking tonight, serious punching and counterpunching taking place right now in what has become a full-fledged trade war between the U.S. and China. Within the past hour, President Trump has announced another major tariff increase on more than $500 billion of Chinese imports. He tweets, starting on October 1st, the $250 billion of goods and products from China, currently being taxed at 25%, will be taxed at 30%. Additionally, the remaining $300 billion of goods and products from China that was being taxed from September 1st at 10% now will be taxed at 15%, ending with, "Thank you for your attention to this matter." This comes after this morning word that Beijing hit the U.S. with $75 billion worth of new tariffs. The president responded by urging American firms to leave the world's most populous country. That earlier message sent the markets reeling. The Dow plummeting today 623 points. The S&P 500 lost 76. The Nasdaq plunged 240. For the week, the Dow lost 1 percentage point. The S&P 500 dropped almost 1.5. The Nasdaq lost a little less than 2. Today's events put an exclamation point on comments from the head of the Federal Reserve, who is rapidly becoming one of the president's favorite villains, that the trade situation is complicating his ability to deal with one of President Trump's favorite topics, interest rates. Correspondent Rich Edson starts us off tonight, a busy day on the North Lawn of the White House. Good evening, Rich.
Good evening, Brett. And the president promised a response, and here it is. Another escalation in this trade fight between the United States and China. Officials say the president met with his trade advisors today. The result is this announcement and fears from global investors that the trade relationship between the two countries only gets worse from here. If you saw President Trump's Twitter feed today, you know the president has had enough with China. In a series of tweets, he stated, quote, "We don't need China and, frankly, would be far better off without them." China this morning announced tariffs on $75 billion of American products, setting off an initial market drop and the president of the United States. Trump says American companies, quote, "are hereby ordered to immediately start looking for an alternative to China." And Trump tweeted an order that, quote, "all carriers, including FedEx, Amazon, UPS, and the Post Office, to search for and refuse all deliveries of fentanyl from China or anywhere else." UPS and FedEx responded, saying they work with authorities and follow laws and regulations to intercept illegal shipments. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro defended the administration's stance.
We know that China steals massively from us. We know they're killing Americans with fentanyl. We know they manipulate their currency. So when Americans understand that, and then when China tries to bully us, that only strengthens our resolve.
Administration officials have described China as the United States' most significant global challenge and adversary. Despite that, the president asked, quote, "Who is our bigger enemy, Jay Powell or Chairman Xi?" Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve President Trump selected. The president claims Powell and the Fed are constraining economic growth, refusing to lower interest rates further and faster.
My admonition to the Fed is don't play checkers in a chess world. Central banking around the world is a chess match.
Speaking before a major Fed conference in Wyoming, Powell threw it back on the president, saying uncertainty around trade is playing a role in the global economic slowdown. Quote, while monetary policy is a powerful tool that works to support consumer spending, business investment, and public confidence, it cannot provide a settled rule book for international trade. Even as the markets tanked, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average spending the day hundreds of points in the negative, the president kept tweeting. At one point, he even joked, quote, the Dow is down 573 points, perhaps on the news that Representative Seth Moulton, whoever that may be, has dropped out of the 2020 presidential race. Now, the White House had said trade negotiations are scheduled to resume next month with China. As to the president ordering American companies to disengage from China, the White House has offered no clarity on what authority a president of the United States has to compel an American business to move their operations out of another country. Brett?
Rich Edson, live in the North Lawn. Rich, thank you.
So let's just answer what he said there first about what authority does an American president have to order an or what authority does the president have to order an American business to not operate within a certain country? They don't. The only thing that can be done is if they were to put sanctions on a country, which kind of more or less tells the country you can't, do business, or tells companies you can't really do business within that country. They sanction it, and basically say if you do business with them, you're not doing business with us, things like that. So that's really all that can be done there. Do I think that he has the right intention by trying to tell American businesses find another avenue to deal with your product? Yeah, I most certainly think that he's definitely on the right path. I mean, without a doubt, because China has been taking advantage of this country for far, far, far too long. And there's plenty of proof of that to go around. There's plenty of evidence of that. They just talked about in the video. They're sending, most of the fentanyl coming into this country is coming from China. I remember some years back when I was a kid, there was an issue with the fact that China, a lot of the toys that children played with that were coming into this country, China got cheap and was using lead paint on these toys, contributing to lead poisoning. Okay? China's stealing a lot of our intellectual property. Okay? Cyber attacks and whatnot. Okay? So China is definitely a dirty player. They've stole plenty of our manufacturing jobs. Well, I wouldn't say stolen. I mean, they didn't come over here and just take them. They left and went to China. Good old corrupt business, as we've been saying. Got to make that money. That's all it's about. They got to make the money. And they know they could get a better deal by going to China, which we'll get to in a second. So I fully support President Trump's efforts. My problem here is it's definitely causing a trade war, but that was kind of to be expected. And so that's where most of his criticisms are coming from. Most of his critics are getting their ammunition. He's causing a trade war. It's going to hurt the American worker. It's going to hurt the average Joe. It's going to make the price of the everyday living go up. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. And you know what? They may be right. They may be right, which is, again, why we should be spending more money into our own country to get through those tough times. If nothing else, if we had all this money taken away from all these foreign aids and foreign wars and used it in our own country, okay, if our people did have some hard times, you could do maybe even possibly like a stimulus package to try to ease it up some for the people. But here's my problem. I mean, however you want to go about addressing those issues, we could debate that. That would take a much longer video than what I'm going to make today. But here's the bigger picture here, people. Former U.S. presidents, former secretaries of state, and the people who've been negotiating trade going all the way back to Richard Nixon when we first started having trade relations with China have made lopsided deals with China. And they have all taken a nice big stick and whacked the average Joe over the head with it for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years even with China. Okay? So they haven't done us any favors realistically when it comes to China. And they've made a mess. And not only have they made a mess with trade deals with China, but my God, they own a nice chunk of our overall debt. And I was told once, when I was in high school, one of my teachers, now if there's some economic expert that wants to say I'm wrong on this, I'm always open to, new information. And I'm no, whiz in economics, but I know more or less basic stuff. And what I heard from this individual, it stands to reason to me. I see no reason why this wouldn't be true. From what I know about money, it sounds right. It sounds perfectly rational. And they basically said that if China ever wanted to just sink us, they'd just come to us and say, okay, you don't want to trade with us anymore, you want to alienate us, blah, 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 pay us. Pay us everything you owe us right now. And if they demanded that money up front, right then, right now, the United States would have two choices. Choice number one, print the money and pay it. Well, if you print that much money, our currency goes and it's no good. We would basically have old Soviet Union currency and it would be absolutely worthless because you can't just print that much money. That's basic economics. The more money you print, the less valuable it becomes. Henceforth, when I've done my trade video, I explained that's why when you have fewer products on the market, they tend to cost more than the mass produced. If you've got a ton of that money sitting out there, it's not as valuable as if you don't have a whole lot of that money sitting out there. That increases the value or decreases the value of the money by how much of it you're just printing out hand over fist. That's tactics that the Soviet Union started doing. They had to just print money, just printing it out, and it became worthless. Okay? So it would either crash the currency, which would overall crash the economy, or we would then refuse to pay the debt because we don't want to crash our currency, in which case we're taking a serious risk there because all these other countries are going to see that we're wanting to borrow money like there's no tomorrow, but then we want to tell you what to do, and when we can't get along with you and we can't trade with you, and then those countries say, okay, fine, we don't want to deal with you. Just give us our money. Just give us our money and let's be done with this. We're not going to pay it. We don't have it to pay. We'd have to print out a ton of money to pay it, and we don't want to do that. So then they're going to be skeptical to loan us any more money, which means all this crap where we're just spending, and we're not balancing the budget at all. You would see a collapse one way or the other. The not paying the debt, you at least have the avenue that it may not turn out as bad as what I just described, but you're running a serious risk that it does, is basically the way it was described to me. Either one of those outcomes, we're screwed, son. We're screwed. China has us bent over a barrel. Okay? That's the problem here. Because of the poor conditions in that country, just like I described with Mexico, they don't have labor unions. The workers don't get the benefits we have. They're known for sweatshops. They cheap out on material. They manipulate their currency. They steal our intellectual property. Okay? They're playing by a different set of rules here, guys. And the other problem is, this is why I said in my trade video, you shouldn't be negotiating a free trade agreement with a country where the work and the trade would be lopsided, where the conditions are worse. Because if it's free trade, son, what are you doing? They're going to outperform. Now, are they going to outperform in quality? Probably. I'm going to go with the probably not. I could see the argument from each side that, if it's done right, they could produce more and just as good a quality. But going off how cheap China tends to be, they're more than likely going to, just cheap out and mass produce it, but it'll be crap quality compared to American made. I'm going to go with that one and say that the quality wouldn't be nearly as good. But either way, it doesn't really matter because they're going to turn out a lot more of it. And the quality be what it may, I think anybody could, if they're willing to look at this situation with an open mind, would say whatever hits the American market, American shoppers, especially working class people, tend to go for whatever they think is the most bang for their buck. If it is considerably cheaper than American made, they're not looking at who made it. Some people do. Some people do. Some people are true to America and only want American made. But most people just see the same thing sitting side by side and one costs $5 more and they can't tell the difference, so they say, boop, okay, I'll take this one. And that one was made in China, Vietnam, Japan, Mexico, Taiwan. Okay? So, I mean, I think that should really get the whole point across right there. American workers, while I am not opposed to unions, so I'm not trying to give that message, I think that there is a good purpose for what the unions are there for. Some get out of control, but they definitely have their purpose. And I think that's one of the things that really built the middle class of this country and contributed to what America is today. Okay? I really do believe that, honestly. But the problem is, because we have all these conditions for our working environment that stipulate our minimum wage, our benefits, our hours of work, our breaks, and this and that and the other thing, and they don't get that in another country, and they can work you longer, pay you less, all these other things, don't have to, meet all these OSHA regulations, EPA regulations, things like that, because they're not having to comply on that two-way street. They're churning out way more product at a faster pace, cheating and cheaping out on how good it is and what they're making it out of. Okay? There's even been clear examples of where products made by companies here in America, people buy it and get a warranty on it, and then people were bringing the stuff in to turn in for their warranty, and what they found out was it was actually like fraud products that were made by China. They were making them just like another product, so basically copyright infringement. They were completely trying to mimic some other product, make it look just like it, and then they were using like recycled serial numbers on the stuff. And so they started seeing all these serial numbers coming in. That's China. That's the dirty tricks China's playing. And our politicians have gotten us in bed with these crooks. And so whether you agree with it on how President Trump is handling it or not, I got to ask, what's the man supposed to do? What is he supposed to do? You have a problem with the fact that he's trying to use tariffs against China to try to make them play fair. Well, what is he supposed to do? I mean, and he's not exactly coming from a position of strength to do this to China as it is, but at least he's trying. He's not come from a position of strength because how much money does China owe us and how much money do we owe China? How many jobs have we taken from China and how many jobs has China gotten from us? And the big thing that a lot of them seem to be worried about is that we can't sell any of the goods that we typically sell to China anymore, man. There's all these people in China that are a lot more than the amount of people in this country. Well, that might be true, but I think if you look at what we're selling to China as compared to what they're selling to us, you're apples and oranges. What are we not going to be able to sell to China? Soybeans? Soybeans? Meanwhile, we're buying everything but the kitchen sink, and probably that too, with China's name on the back of it. Because the lopsided trade deals where American business couldn't compete with the cheap cost of China either incentivized more businesses because of the lopsided trade deal to send their jobs to China so they could send it back over here and to sell it to us, but being made over there and get either the same amount of profits, if not more. I'm going to go with more. It either incentivized more businesses to go follow in those footsteps, or if they tried to stay true to the United States, generally they couldn't compete and they ended up going out of business. You don't believe me on that? Then let's just take a look, shall we?
America's growing trade deficit with China has eliminated more than 2.8 million U.S. jobs over the past decade. That's the stark evidence revealed in a new report published by the Economic Policy Institute, a Washington-based think tank. The growing trade deficits have cost jobs in every single congressional district, including the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico.
The hardest hit states were New Hampshire, which lost about 2.8% of all its jobs due to growing trade deficits with China. Number two was California, which lost about 2.7% of its jobs. And number three was Massachusetts, which lost about 2.6% of all jobs in the state.
The biggest job losses were in the nation's heavily industrialized states, 454,000 in California alone.
The industries that should take notice of this report are manufacturing and high tech, because they've lost more jobs to China than any other sectors in the United States economy. And I think it's not surprising for manufacturing, and we know we have work cut out for us in dealing with some unfair trade practices, but I think the bigger surprise is something like high tech.
The lion's share of job losses have been in the computer and electronic parts industry, where 900,000 jobs were lost.
China is moving very aggressively to take increasing market share from the U.S. and around the world in advanced technology products. That includes beyond computers. It includes such things as biotechnology and nuclear technology. These are products that are identified that we're supposed to have a competitive advantage in.
Scott Paul termed the report conclusive evidence that China's trade violations and currency manipulation are having the same devastating impact on high-tech production that they've already had on the nation's long-standing industrial base.
You see these companies with fabulous profits like Apple, these iconic companies, yet, Apple's success is not reflected in American jobs. And in fact, they outsource a lot of their production to China. So it's really not helping the American economy, the American worker, all that much. And that's a problem we need to address head on.
Paul called for a national strategy to restore America's global leadership in manufacturing.
Congress could do some very simple things. First, we do have to aggressively confront China's unfair trade practices. China's cheating on currency. It should stop. China's cheating on something called rare earth mineral exports, which is important to the American high-tech sector. It should stop that. China's cheating on intellectual property. It should stop that. The United States should do more than say, China, please stop. The United States should impose sanctions if China's not stopping. The other thing that Congress can do is pass a manufacturing policy so that we are supporting our industries in a way that is consistent with our trade obligations, but which also says manufacturing is important to the U.S. economy. We can compete.
Global trade in advanced technology products, often discussed as a source of comparative advantage for the United States, the report noted, is instead now dominated by China.
China is moving rapidly into high-tech products. Right now, it's dominated by trade and computers and communications equipment and those kinds of products. It's moving aggressively into auto parts, an industry which has already lost close to 50,000 jobs due to growing trade deficits with China. And we know from news reports that China has targeted, for example, its green and clean technology industries with all kinds of illegal subsidies and trade restrictions.
Whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, it doesn't make a difference because this is not a partisan issue. You need to say, President Obama, name China as a currency manipulator, pass a manufacturing policy, support our industry. Congress, pass a China currency bill that has bipartisan support. Also, pass that manufacturing policy. You can do it.
Find out about your state's job losses by visiting the interactive map on our website, americanmanufacturing.org/in-your-state.
Did anybody catch one little part of that where it said 900,000 computer jobs were lost? People, that number may not even be accurate today because that video is 7 years old. 7 years old. As a matter of fact, Let's just see what the total job loss is as of today to China. Let's just take a look at that real quick. So right here, headline, growing trade deficit with China has led to a loss of 3.4 million U.S. jobs between 2001 and 2017. The video that I had, that I just showed, actually from 7 years ago said it was 2.8. So you can tell, yeah, we've definitely grown quite a bit here, okay? In new analysis, EPI senior economist Robert E. Scott and research assistant Zane Mokabir show that the growing goods trade deficit with China cost 3.4 million U.S. jobs between 2001 and 2017. Losses occurred in all 50 states and every congressional district, with job losses in the hardest hit states including New Hampshire, Oregon, California, Minnesota, North Carolina, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, Wisconsin, and Texas, ranging from 2.57% to 3.55% of the total state employment. North Carolina, that would be my next door neighbor's state, by the way. I'm South Carolina. Okay? So right there, 3.4 million jobs over the course of 16 years we've lost to China. So again, I have to ask, what else is President Trump supposed to do? Because to me, he's being far more proactive than any other president in regards of trying to bring China to the table and tell them, hey, you're going to play fair. Even the guy in that video I just put up, talking about the issues with China, again, 7 years old, but even he brought up the fact that, hey, yeah, something's got to be done here. Something's got to be done, whether it be through sanctions, whether it be through tariffs. He went with sanctions. But whatever the case, somebody has really got to crack down on China and give them a swift kick in the ass, basically, and say, hey, son, you're not going to keep taking advantage of us. And again, the problem is, not only do we have a lopsided trade deal, we're not on an even playing field when it really comes to discussions from what I've seen. We owe them a lot of money. They don't owe us a lot of money. They have a lot more people than we do. And American jobs left and went to them long ago. Not many Chinese jobs left China to come to us. So we're not exactly, you hear them say all the time, the bully pulpit, negotiating from a position of strength. Yeah, that shit don't apply to us right now. Not one bit of it. We're not negotiating from a position of strength. We're not negotiating, with power on our side at this point. They've taken a lot from us. We've taken squat from them. But I at least commend him for trying, because somebody is going to have to do something. Somebody's going to have to do something. And you can't expect these greedy companies to just do it out of the kindness of their heart, because they're not that kind. They're going to keep making money as long as they think they can. Greed, 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 son. Money makes the world go round, and they're going to keep doing exactly what they've been doing as long as they can do it and get away with it. And the problem is, President Trump can send all the tweets that he wants saying, hey, you can't do business with them. He doesn't have the right to tell them that, and if he tried to enforce it, it would just further the whole thing. He's trying to be a dictator. He's trying to this. He's trying to that. The man's caught between a rock and a hard place because of bad trade deals former leaders of this country have negotiated over time. And if you really want to see just how screwed up everything is, for example, we're spending $4 billion a month in Afghanistan. Tulsi just talked about that in one of her recent speeches. Tulsi Gabbard. $4 billion a month in Afghanistan. And what are we doing in Afghanistan? Well, we're trying to have a war that we've been in for God knows how long. way, way, way too long. We went in to try to overthrow the Taliban. The Taliban controls more of Afghanistan now than they did before we came in. Let's also add that for all the drug problems that are in this country, we keep talking about having drug issues, opioid epidemic, fentanyl, this and that. Before we went into Afghanistan, they put the poppy growers out of business, and it actually caused a huge crisis in the international banks because all that laundered money was going to start drying up because a big chunk of the poppy used for drugs was coming from Afghanistan. Before we went into oust the Taliban, they put the poppy growers out. We went in, even though they control more of it now than they used to, poppy business went back full swing. Oh, wow. What? How? Why? What? That's a topic for another day. Just giving you that little tidbit of information, and you're welcome to look it up. I might make a video on that another time. But that's true. You can look it up. Okay? At the same time, while we're trying to carry on wars, China has bought rights to over like 1,400 mineral fields in Afghanistan. So while we're there just blowing crap to kingdom come and conducting a war, China's harvesting minerals from the ground. We're not talking about, crystal. We're talking about minerals that get used in a lot of things. A lot of things. For example, some of the things they have, the 1,400 mineral fields containing barite, chromite, coal, copper, gold, iron ore, lead, natural gas, petroleum, precious and semi-precious stones, salt, sulfur, talc, and zinc, among many other minerals. Wow. So while China is in that country trying to get their hands on all these things, and by the way, you can look this up also, rather than cut back to another, clip of my PC screen here. I'll say it if you don't believe me. Check me on it. Some years ago, and I'm not talking that many years ago, right around like 2012, 2013, they discovered some minerals, untapped minerals in that country. The one particular that I heard, lithium. They discovered a vein of lithium worth about $1 trillion. Trillion, with a T, people. Trillion. That's what they're trying to get their hands on while we're just there carrying out war. Spending money, not getting anything out of it other than destruction, and the fact that our military-industrial complex is nice and happy. But they're trying to get their hands on this stuff. And what is lithium being used in? I don't know. Batteries, cell phones, TVs, laptop computers. So basically all this modern stuff. And while we're talking about modern, touch on the jobs real quick. One thing you hear a lot of the Democrats saying, and you hear some Republicans saying when they're running for office, is we got to get the jobs of tomorrow. We got to get the jobs of tomorrow. Richard Ojeda said it. Plenty of other people have said it. Well, in today's world, what would be the jobs of tomorrow? You see, a lot of jobs people consider older and outdated, and things change. Automation's coming along. It's gonna be a hard train to stop. I really don't know that you can stop automation. Maybe you'll stop it in certain fields, but you won't stop automation as a whole. It's been going on for years and years and years and years and years. So if computers are starting to do more and more and more of the physical labor jobs, what is left for the people to do? Maybe build the computers that are doing the physical jobs. But that would mean we have to have those kind of jobs available. We have to have training available. We have to have an education system that incentivizes you to learn these sorts of things so that by the time you get in the real world, you can actually get those jobs, which is why I have a serious problem with the education system we have in this country now, where they're forcing you to take classes like, I don't know, science class where you're dissecting a frog. They don't teach you about how to balance your budget. They don't teach you about, your taxes. They don't teach you real trades. Now, let me be clear. They may have the classes. They're what we call in my school electives. And you can only get so many electives. And you have to take all this other crap that you may never use in the real world. I got a serious problem with that. I think that's a serious problem with college. If I want to go in for criminal justice, why do I have to take a class on astrology? Well, but that's how they set it up. You go in for one thing, but they require you to take all these different classes. Why can't I just take the class that I need to get myself a job in the real world? Instead, they make you take all this other superficial crap that comes with it that you do not need, and then you get out with a fat bill, just like at a hospital, that you can't pay because you're in so much student debt. That right there is the reason. If I only had to pay for the one class that I needed or whatever, because that's my thing. And I have a problem with this too. Why do you have to have an associate's or a master's or a bachelor's degree? Why can't you get certifications? If I want to be a cop, why can't I go get police certified? Well, they have police academy for that. But if I want to go do criminal justice, why can't I just go take that class and anything that may directly correlate to it that I may particularly need, I can understand if it's not just one, and get a criminal justice certification through that college. Why can't we do things like that? Why does it have to be you have to have all this extra crap that you got to pay for and never use? And in public school, you may not be paying for all those classes as a student when you're there, but nonetheless, you're having to take them. And that's taking away from classes that you could be taking, like welding or machine tool, automotive repair. All these classes you could be taking give you a balanced, skill set that when you get out in the real world, you're able to do things. That's the serious problem. So it's completely lopsided. But back to my original point, the computer stuff, that's the jobs of tomorrow, and I don't think that's debatable. That's not debatable. That is the jobs of tomorrow. So we need to incentivize more and more and more people to get into that field. But China's getting all those jobs. They're not coming here. They're going to China. So our jobs of tomorrow are leaving. And again, you can thank all this lopsided deal making that these politicians have done for so long with China for why they all flood over there, because it's all about making the money. They might be the jobs of tomorrow, but that don't mean they're the most honest and moral of people. They're still going to take whatever avenue brings in the greatest profits for their shareholders, stockholders, and investors. That's how it's going to be. That's what they're going to do. So we have to fight back. We have to try to find a way. However that way is, it's going to have to be done. And what people are going to understand is it will probably, at this point, I almost guarantee, it's going to bring hard times on blue-collar people. And not that we should be paying for it. It's certainly wrong. If anything, it should be those rich people who made these lopsided deals. They should be the ones paying for it. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case. It's going to be old working class people who are going to get the butt end of this whole problem to get it fixed. But at the end of the day, the main thing is that we get the problem fixed. And if we get the problem fixed, we really don't have to worry about it as long as no one else ever comes into office and starts bumbling everything up again. And that's a serious concern when you look at some of the people who run for office. But at the end of the day, say what you want about Trump, say what you want about tariffs. Tariffs go back a long way as being a protection mechanism for the American worker, except in this case, it is a protection for the American worker to try to stop even more outsourcing, to try to rein China in. Unfortunately, before we can get the end result, if we can get that end result at this point because of all these years of bad deals, if we get there, it's probably most certainly going to hurt the working class in the process, unless the American government starts taking all this money we're spending on all this other crap and using it to support the working class through those hard times. Unless that happens, we can expect some pain from these policies. But what's the alternative? To sit back and do nothing while more and more and more and more of our jobs get lost to China, while they steal more of our crap? To me, neither one really are going to work good. Only one might come out to a positive outcome. The other's just going to keep going down the road we've been going down, and that road is nothing but trouble and disaster. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Independent Report. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Also, please subscribe to the channel, as we're trying to grow this channel to reach more and more people every day. And if you subscribe, be sure that you ring that bell so that you stay up to date and get notifications when we release new content. Also, please support us in the link below with our Patreon. We're trying to make this channel grow. Funds will be used to grow the channel and to reach more people. We appreciate your support, and we hope you tune in next time.